All right, we are back with another AmeriCorps alum. This is going to be like, I just want you all to hang in there because our interview was supposed to be 30 minutes and we talked for an hour and a half. Hour and a half. And we talked about, so AmeriCorps, sure, but we also talked about a lot of other things. So I'm so excited to have Tray Deadwyler with us here today. And yeah, we're going to go over his background and his history. But for those of you that are new to the podcast, my name's Nikki Fiacco. This is AmeriCorps Connections. I'm a proud AmeriCorps alumni, and I basically founded this podcast and AmeriCorps Connections because my AmeriCorps year impacted me. And one of the things that I took away from it most of all is networking and connections and how important that is in your personal life, in your professional life. And I wanted to continue connecting, and particularly with AmeriCorps alumni, because I'm very, very interested in what people are up to now. If you think about it, there's 1.2 million of us, and I'm trying to talk to as many as I can. So I'm hitting a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the folks. And I just want to get the stories out. You know, this is a really important time for AmeriCorps, for service, for our country. And so far I've had 22, I think this will be my 23rd conversation. Maybe this is my 22nd conversation. And I feel like the stories are getting out there, and we're building a community, which is very, very cool. Before I dive into Trey's background and give you the floor, basically, I do want to give a shout out to Dan Medevere, who is from Time or Money Productions. And he's really the one that helped me get this podcast off the ground. If you're listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, then Dan directly made that happen. So thank him. And he's an NCCC alumni. So how cool is that? Yeah, right on. Like, he reached out to me right away and he was like, I want to help. And I'm like, do you want to interview? He's like, we'll get to the interview part, but let me help you get this word out. So he's been instrumental on so many things. If you've seen some of the shorts that I've put out there, he pointed me in the direction of that technology. So thank you, Dan. Time or Money Productions. Okay, now we are here with Tray Deadwyler, and you can see he's from Think for Good and the Service Nerd Collective. But that's not where he started, folks. I think that this man has touched every aspect of service in some way, shape, or form. I mean, he's pulling up like founders' names, points of light, hands-on connect. I mean, this man has done it all. And I'm really excited to highlight the work that he's done, but super, super excited to bring you his resource of what he's doing now, because this is a man that you want to definitely bring in. And some of his knowledge is amazing. So we're gonna just see where this conversation takes us. Let's start with we got to at least keep it like in the context of AmeriCorps alum.
Sure.
How did you find out about AmeriCorps, and why did you choose to serve? And then we'll go from there. Take it away, Trey.
And thanks for allowing me to be here with you. Thanks everyone for listening and watching this awesome podcast. So I think the story goes, I was already working in the space. I was working for the American Red Cross back then when I started. This is around 2003, 2004. And also because, working in the nonprofit space, still wasn't making enough money. So at night, I was also serving at Chili's with the baby back ribs and all that good stuff. Everyone knows that good place. And so I had a friend that was actually there at Chili's that just finished an NCCC year and term at the Denver location. We met and we hit it off immediately. One of my best friends still to this day. And he said, I know what you do right now, and I think you should do this program, this NCCC thing. I said, it sounds cool. He's talking about being in the woods, being outside every day. I'm like, oh, that's just, we're already sold. And fast forward a couple of weeks, we had some folks, some of his team members came in. They actually had dinner at Chili's with us. They told me about the program.
Awesome.
From there, I immediately went through the process to start the process to apply. And at the same time, had to tell my supervisors at the Red Cross, hey, I'm considering this thing. And lo and behold, hey, I got approved, went through the interview process. I thought I was going to be local for some reason. I don't know why I thought that, or at least thought I was going to go to Denver. But they shipped me all the way to Sacramento to McClellan to be in the NCCC Class 11 Western Region, the ones, as we like to call ourselves.
Okay. If there's any other ones out there or Class 11s, like hit the subscribe button right now to support this channel and support Tray.
Now, if you are in the red hot oven, if y'all know what that means, everyone that was in that unit, if you're in the red hot oven, my fire team, my crew, and my team, definitely like and subscribe, and then get on this podcast.
Yes.
So that was basically 2004. I served in 2004 to 2005, my NCCC. We worked everywhere from San Francisco, Sacramento, Indio, California. We were in Tucson, Arizona. I was on a fire team as well. So we were also in the El Dorado National Forest. I came back after my national service year to actually serve back with Red Cross. Wouldn't you believe it? Working in youth services as well as running our National Preparedness and Response Corps. So I'll pause there because that was the beginning of the journey in national service. But now about almost two decades later, still haven't stopped. So
still in it, totally still in it. Yeah,
I'm excited about next year because that's 20 years officially from raising my hand saying I will get things done for America. So.
That's so cool. And AmeriCorps, I think, is turning 30 this year or something like that. So it's a big deal, right? So during your service year, let's just pull out maybe one or two examples of how the program impacted you, or something that you saw that that either challenged your frame of the world, or something that you learned. 2 or 3 examples from your service year.
Sure. I think the first one that comes to mind is actually, this is funny because we didn't even talk about this before, but this is really good to talk through.
We barely talked about alumni.
Right. But you know what? I think what it is? It was Tucson, Arizona. We worked alongside a charter school at a charter school there in Tucson, and I ended up working with in the English and Literature department, and actually supported teaching poetry for part of a semester, or basically the semester while we were there. And that changed a lot of things. One, when I was working at Red Cross before, I was already still in youth development. So I thought I was going to be it was right there in that vein. I realized more so how much I loved teaching and seeing the transformation, seeing the light bulbs. And it's just like, especially for like young minds, and you see, they start off when we're just talking about figures of speech, and by the end, they're writing sonnets. It's really cool to see that process. So that was one big, what I learned there is that how much, one, I learned about myself, but I love the process. A lot of folks I know don't love the process, but I really enjoy the process of transformation, the process of leadership, and the process of learning.
So I don't want to push us down a rabbit hole. Don't follow me down this rabbit hole. But I just heard today that we need to, the idea of changing from goal orientated to process orientation, because if we're always like the next goal, then we really have to fall in love with the process to get the thing. And, so anyways, we're not going down that rabbit hole. Stay focused. Oh, you're going to add something. Go ahead.
Well, the other part, so because what you can fall into is the hedonic treadmill of you get the goal and it's like you're never getting that place where you're really satiated.
Yes.
So you're grasping at things, and you're grasping at things and grasping at things.
Yes.
And then sometimes when it doesn't go your way, you fall deep.
Yes.
But if you look at any, if you take your success trajectory, it is never going to be a straight line, right? It has hills and valleys and rocks and, something torpedoed it. And then there's like a drawbridge that's happened. I don't know where it comes from. And so there's these moments where it just goes up and down. And so if you can be at least stable within that journey, you'll find yourself you're enjoying the journey, no matter if it's a big high or low.
And it's taking the failures or taking the mistakes and realizing that is part of the process. And that goes back to what you said about kind of falling in love with teaching and seeing the light bulb, because that's what happens when people are learning and then all of a sudden they come with you on the journey, and then they're like, oh, I got this. And then that's when they kind of take their own route. But, yes, that up and down, and everything's a learning opportunity. Nothing is a failure.
Everything's an opportunity for growth, unless you see it as an opportunity for failure. But really, everything is an opportunity for growth. Even if you don't accomplish it, it's an opportunity for you to learn that that's not how you accomplish it. So everything is an opportunity for growth. And so that's what, a lot of times we're focused on, even in my work right now, it's all about the growth process for folks.
Yeah. So you were talking about,
we didn't go in. We could have gone.
We were so close.
It was very close.
We're like dancing around. We're like, okay. So okay. So I'm gonna do a good job. I'm gonna be an interviewer. So I'm gonna bring it back to you realized that youth services and you're teaching poetry. And what's really interesting about something that you said, I hear a lot of times the folks on NCCC, yes, being outside in nature is beautiful and awe-inspiring, but I think I could go back and find a trend with the NCCC members that a lot of y'all say when you are working with, a lot of times it's youth. And that's when like, it's kind of this, like you either find yourself or something connects. So it sounds like that interaction with teaching poetry and teaching really got into you.
Yes, it did. It did that. You know what? Number two, I would say, would have been Indio, California, out there in that Coachella area. If folks that don't know that space, great tamale festival still going on in Coachella, California. Not just the music festival. Check out the tamale festival. It is wonderful. But building out there, we were building homes with LISC and a housing coalition out there, and just noticing, again, the building process. So this is that's the theme of like from the ground up and seeing things be built and be a part of that building was what is probably where I have those affinities. It's like I love being able to create. I love being able to ideate and build. And so that sticks with me too. So anything that's related, so transformation of the organization, the team, the individual, but also the community. It's also like that sticks with me pretty strongly as well.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like I can imagine, well, it's like anything, right? When you think about it, and then when it materializes and it manifests into the 3D world, it's like, I did that. Like that came from here. And now I did that. It's like, honestly, it's this podcast, right? Like it's literally, this podcast is a manifestation and a building. It's just something that had been eating me inside. And I just was like, this needs to happen. And then finally I'm like, just figure it out, and now here we are on our 20-something episode. So
if I'm 23, awesome. I'm very excited, by the way, because that's the MJ number. I gotta be. That's
you're the goat of the podcast.
Let me find out if I'm the goat of the podcast. It's going to be great. I'm telling you right now. I will wear that for a while.
I'll let you know. I have to count from. I can't remember if I'm on 22 or 23. So, is there anything else that you want to reflect about your service year or want folks to know?
I think when you're working so NCCC is a really interesting program, and I think it's like, of course, like no other, because you live, you work, you eat, you hang out, you play, you cry with, laugh with, cook, sleep. with your team the entire time. You find the best Goodwills, learn how to make mass cook for 12 people all at once. You learn how to budget for a family of 12 people all at once.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And so that creates you, and everyone's from different places. I'm from Atlanta. We had folks from Wichita. We had folks from New York. We had some folks from Nevada. We had some folks from Illinois. Like, so everyone's coming from different places, different cultures, different ways of, different dialects, different way of speaking. And so learning how to navigate all the little nuances and the changes, and I won't say they're challenges, but they're these small little nuances of like how we communicate and how we go through life, and understanding how everyone is experiencing even the same moment differently.
Yes.
Was really powerful.
Absolutely.
I think, and so getting that really helped frame a lot of everything else. Again, even in like now when I teach, one of my presuppositions I push to everyone is that we live, lead, and experience life, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Everyone's experiencing life from the inside out. And it is sometimes very difficult for folks to believe that. But when we break it down, you see, oh, it's coming from me first. My interpretation, my meaning I'm placing on the experience. And that's telling me how I should behave, what emotion I'm going to have, and so on. So yeah, that was, and I draw that nice little line back to being an NCCC.
That's beautiful. I love that. And it's so true when you can grasp that no situation is bad or good. It's your response to it.
Yes.
You get so much control. It was so funny, actually, in my 9 to 5 today, that just happened. We use a CRM and it was called a certain name, and they changed the name, and the name makes no sense. Right. And one of my colleagues was like, don't you hate that? And I go, I don't take up any time. Like, there's nothing I can do about that. So it's not even something I think about. Right. And there's things that, like, in our life, like, how many times do you go into the grocery store and they move things around? I mean, I'm like, but this box of Triscuits used to be in this aisle and now it's somewhere else. Now I'm like, well, it's an adventure. I'm not going to get upset with them. I know why they're doing it. They want me to buy more things, but I'm just not going to. So I love that reflection on your NCCC year. It makes so much sense. And how cool is it too? Because that program is for 20-something-year-olds. It's like that's young first quarter of your life sort of experience. And to navigate that and get through it and then have a reflection, would you say 20 years later that you can draw a straight line, like that really influenced you as a young 20-year-old, Yeah.
It definitely did. It definitely did.
All right. So you finished your service year, you washed your pants, you hung up your uniform, and what did you do next?
So I didn't actually hang up the uniform. I still actually have my BDU pants from NCCC. Side note, I can still fit them. So that's a big deal, by the way.
That's huge.
I can still fit my NCCC uniform.
We should have a competition.
So I moved once I came back from from NCCC, went back to Red Cross, and actually supported, along with our youth department. I moved over into our readiness department and supported the National Preparedness Response Corps, which was the National American Red Cross's National Direct AmeriCorps program. We had a core of about, from each year, I think about no more than about 10. It was somewhere around that every year. And they worked all throughout Metro Atlanta, supporting mitigating those man-made disasters, education, and then educating the public and citizenry in the communities around how to prevent house fires and everything else. So really cool process, really cool program. They also went out on DRs as well. My first DR coming back into Red Cross in 2005. Many of you all know what happened in August 2005, Hurricane Katrina. My first big DR, which was probably one of the worst disasters that we had here on the homeland. And that was a good throw in, and I wouldn't say that's like a metaphor, but I will tell you that
Swim.
my chief officer was like, no, you're going. So that started from there.
Did you interact with the AmeriCorps disaster agency or disaster services part of the AmeriCorps arm at all while you were there?
At that time, we were a part of that.
Okay.
Back then. So
Gotcha.
my members basically deployed
like the
just
ADARs.
like everyone else. So
Gotcha.
they rolled out as soon as there was a big DR. There was time for them to go, and I wasn't even with them for that during that time. I was deployed also in a different location. They were under another supervisor that was over that part of that disaster. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then what was it like? What was your role with that disaster?
So I ended up running opening up about 5 different shelters through the metropolitan Atlanta area. The last one was out in Cobb County, Georgia. It was like in the Lost Mountain, west part of Cobb County. So basically shelter manager, most of that. And since we were also very close to Dobbins Air Force Base, if you would imagine folks coming from New Orleans, coming from basically from one place off, sometimes off the top of homes, getting triaged and coming directly to Dobbins Air Force Base here in Georgia, and then coming directly to my shelter. I think that was another moment, and you're like, one, can I do this? And what am I learning from this moment? The first thing I learned, I need to also eat.
Right.
I think this is something that's really important for a lot of us that in this space, that I always see now when I'm working with some leaders, that we are sometimes maybe unbeknownst, but there's a lot of self-sacrifice that's there. Altruism can go into a different space where we forget to care for ourselves first.
Fill your cup.
Right. And it's nothing, we can't give anything that we don't have. And so so that was a moment when I realized, I need to eat. And matter of fact, my volunteers told me I needed to eat. I was withering away a little bit. But that was another moment where I was like, okay, this is exactly where I need to be in this moment. And I'm going to do the best job I can.
Yeah, so, that's amazing. And it is true, especially those boots on the ground folks. Like you're so worried about making sure. You were probably more worried about your volunteers than you were about yourself.
I was. And then that's when I'll tell you, they noticed something. They start making me eat. So they pulled me to the side. If I was in the office at the shelter, they would bring food to me because I would still be pushing. And then they noticed that I wasn't sleeping because I would still be up making sure everyone is good. So in this, if you know anything about like the Red Cross shelters, it's very unique. We had about 20 plus hospital beds on my front row. That's unheard of, right? So that front row in that shelter, in that gymnasium, was all hospital beds, so it was a different type of experience for, than what we were even trained for. And so when I couldn't sleep, I just wasn't sleeping. One of the volunteers actually brought their trailer, their Winnebago out to the shelter, and they mandated that I at least sleep in there to get my, when I traded out and got some sleep. As soon as I got up, showered, and then came right back. And then, so that was another lesson again.
Yeah. Good for you. That's incredible.
We're still managing the National Service Program. I stayed with Red Cross until I moved over to the Points of Life Foundation, the Hands-On Networks. I was over there for a number of years as well. Worked with Hands-On Georgia to help our rural programs in the state of Georgia. Shout out to that. I love that. I love the Hands-On Georgia process. One, because I'm born and raised here in Atlanta. My family is from rural Georgia. So it got me an opportunity to just get outside of the metro again, without just going to the family reunion, but seeing a lot of Georgia where I probably would have waited to go see. And that was an AmeriCorps program, a formula program for that. We worked with small volunteer centers within the state, and still moved from there. Then end up working in the if some folks may know of Hands-On University. If you did any type of training in like the volunteer management training training series, you probably did some work that we helped design in that space. And so did that, and then also was doing helping design and implement our programs in environmental stewardship, the entire swath of national service, education, economic opportunity programs, our veterans programs, which was the Veteran Leader Corps, was my last big program that I ended up leading and developing before I just went to compliance and design. And then that was after that, I transitioned out, and now I'm doing this leadership thing that's pretty dope, right?
Pretty dope. Yes. I was going to say that's quite a jump from doing the work with the veterans to compliance.
Yeah.
How did you do that head spin?
So what's interesting, it's so the old nickname of like so the reason why I think my friends started calling me service nerd while I was working in that space. And I was like, it was a little bit of a dig before, because, and this is how nerdy it got. One, no one really wants to memorize the CFRs. No one.
There's going to be people out here that are like, I love this.
It's not too many of us out here that want to do that. I love it, right? So I knew the language. I won't say I knew about like the back of my hand, because sometimes things change, but I knew it pretty well. And I did have a lot of pieces memorized, and I could tell you where it was. Now I can't do this today, but that was one of the reasons from that. And so, knowing that I had a very much a compliance first approach to design, that allowed me to support design and then also create systems for us to maintain compliance for all of our national service, for our entire national service portfolio.
We thank you for that. I also am not, well, you are a CSR or CFR memorizer. I am not. Until I figured out how to bookmark them when I was working for the commission. So I was like, I think I need to have a few of these bookmarked.
Yes.
There's very smart people that keep talking about these really important things that I think I should know more about.
Yes.
That's amazing.
The mega search document was a big deal back then. The mega search, when it got the big aggregate, I knew exactly where we needed to go in that document. I could find it. And then something told me I killed a bunch of trees.
I know.
I printed it out one time. I was like, this was a bad idea. Terrible idea.
Yeah. And for those folks that are listening and they're see what, basically these are guidelines on staying in compliance from the federal government. And if you have an AmeriCorps program, or you're in a commission or whatever, these are like these are the rules, and you must know the rules. Now they're interpreted kind of, but for the most part, you're right.
Rules and guidelines.
Yes.
It's purposely good sometimes.
We won't even say that they're suggestions. I would say they're a stop sign to me in a mall parking lot is a suggestion.
Yes.
Not a guideline and not a rule.
Good. That's really good. That's good. Boundaries that circumambulate us, like they don't get close. But so that was a part of my job. It's like, what can we do? Well, it says this, so let's create a system that makes sure that we don't cross this line. So that was, and so I love, again, process. I love systems. And I've always been, I think it seems like now I've always been a systems person. I really like that process.
All right. So did this take you directly to what you're up to now?
Sure. Yeah, it really did. It moved me, after leaving,
you were with the commission, right?
No, I actually was not with the commission.
Oh, okay. Wrong notes.
No, well, I wasn't with the commission officially. It wasn't until I actually officially went full-time in Think for Good, where I started working with more commissions. And so worked with Georgia, worked with Virginia, we've worked with Texas. I mean, it's a lot of folks. And thank you all so much. If you all listening, thank you so much. I love working with commissions. I still love working with commissions. But that helped support, really start off a lot of the process and work that I'm doing right now in the space of leadership. And thinking about so really when I thought about Think for Good coming into this new space, I thought about all the program directors that I worked with, all the whole site managers, every person that I worked with, and from the commission standpoint, going to the large conferences back when we used to do the big conference, especially the one in the symposium we did in DC.
The symposium, yep.
And thinking, what did I need as a program director?
Brilliant.
That I can provide now. So the younger Tray that used to wear bow ties and a suit everywhere, now probably wear a t-shirt if I can. What did I need? And so I've been designing processes and programs and leadership development tools to help that person. So that's what we do so far.
Yeah. And I mean, that's like it's the perfect business model, right? Like, what did I need 10 years ago? Mm-hmm. And fun fact, folks that are listening or watching or whatever, I think it was 2022. Mm-hmm. I was at the America Service Commission's regional conference in Vermont, and I was sitting in one of Tray's leadership trainings. And I was like, oh yeah, I got to connect with this guy. And then of course I went back to my desk in my office and I was like swamped with work. But yeah, so if you're listening to this and you are any type of AmeriCorps program, like this is your guy. Like he's got things for you that can support the work that you're doing. But you have a really interesting model, I think, about how you deploy these resources, because it's not necessarily you getting out there and helping people understand the CFR or whatever. You're really focused on leadership development. Tell me a little bit about like your business model, what you have to offer, and then like what you're focusing on.
It cut out. Could you say that one more time? The last part?
Yeah. And now I'm getting a notice that says my internet connection is unstable. Am I good?
This is good. This is good. We're going to edit this part out.
No, I like to keep this stuff in. T-Mobile, what are you doing? Okay. So I said, you have an interesting model, the way that you deploy your resources within your business, because it's not just you going out and helping people understand CFRs. You're really focused on like leadership development. So tell everyone a little bit about your business, the model, and like how you can help people be great.
Right. Yeah. So there's two parts of it. I mean, two sides of the work, I would say. In the leadership side, leadership development side, and definitely anyone can be in this space. Well, anyone can probably work with us. That approach is basically, we try to do what we call whole life coaching. The idea behind that is that it's you just can't turn on leadership. As a matter of fact, we use the presupposition that how you do anything is how you do everything. So the patterns that we have, even in our personal life, can trickle over into how we lead professionally. And how we communicate, that's a pattern. How we think about things and our approaches, that's a pattern. Everything from how we get up in the morning and so on. So we teach and talk about the patterns that we have and learn how we can make shifts in that, transform those, or use those for our good. I work with some clients, and sometimes we're dealing with anxiety, and we think some of those folks are really analytical. And I'm like, how do we channel that, to reframe that being in your head to using that as your superpower, so to speak, but also working through the other areas of life and showing you how you can create a new life for yourself, a new leadership style, a new communication. And we've noticed if we can pinpoint some of those pain points, we can usually create transformation everywhere. And it's usually just some small things, new habits that need to come into place. Maybe I always say supplant and replace. That's a good old-fashioned CF, AmeriCorps term we like to say.
What was it?
So how we can't supplant or replace volunteers or staff members.
Oh, yes. Yes.
But we can't. So how do we supplant and replace the limiting beliefs, the limiting thoughts and practices that we have that is keeping our programs, our leadership, our lives, our relationships from thriving? So that's what we do on Think for Good side. A lot of the work that you'll make, if you've gone to, like you came to our workshop, that's actually part of the coaching process. So you got a little bit of what we would do if we were working one-on-one. So everything that we try to present at workshops and all of our talks and so on, it's really pulled out from our coaching process that we have. The other thing about that is I don't like to be Google smart, if that makes sense. I don't want to be like, there's certain things that I know, I won't say that I'm an expert in, but I'm pretty good at. That I'm a really good learner in. Like I have a good grasp of it, and I believe I have some wisdom in it. There's other places where I know it, but I know someone else knows it better.
Better, yeah.
Right. And so what we try to do is, where we can, if I feel I'm Google smart in a place that won't give the quality product and service to the client and that team, then we bring in our Service Nerd Collective folks, which is basically a team of consultants that have a particular expertise, and they get recommended to move on. And so it helps to spread out our footprint, but also making sure that people know that there's a great amount of wisdom within our network that sometimes people don't necessarily know. And they are very qualified. There's a lot of little letters behind these folks' names, and I just love listening to them talk. I was like, yeah, it's really good. I think about sometimes when we have opportunities, especially when we have opportunity to share stages, it's quite incredible to watch them work. And so there are people I admire their work, and we share the call for service and how we can actually make service the cornerstone for leadership. And so that's where
I love that. Wait, to make leadership to make service the leadership of. Can you tell me a little bit about what?
the service as the cornerstone of leadership.
Yeah.
We're, one of the things, that old service leadership approach, I think some people forget about nowadays. Yeah. We use transformational leadership. We use all these new terms when it's just packaging sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's about, how do we actually get the most out of people so they can get the most out of themselves? Like, how do we give them as much as we can? Rather, that's a better way of saying it. Giving them as much as we can so they can thrive. And one of the adages that we like, is like, we'll know when we are successful when people feel that they've done it themselves, right? If they are empowered to be like, I don't need you anymore, right? Then I've done my job. Right? If they have to keep asking me questions and stay with me for years on end, then I haven't done my job. So that's the way we try to work. And we know that if you serve the people really well, you serve yourself. And those are the leaders that if we think about it, those are the people that we love to be around. Those are the leaders that we don't want to leave because they've made us better as leaders, as they have, as they have led us. So that's kind of the approach.
How do you think somebody balances? Because the first thing I do when I have a new staff or a new team member, I'm always like, all right, what do you need to learn in the next year to go to your next opportunity? And they're looking at me like, I just got here, but so I'm always like, because I'm an evolutionary creature. I'm like, okay, like my current role that I'm in right now from my 9 to 5, like I used to be the thinker and the visionary, and then I had people that would implement and do. Well, I'm an implementer and doer now in my new role, and I'm like, I'm so excited because it's kind of a new it's not a new, but it's an old muscle that has been dormant for a little while. But what would you say, how would a leader, and I'll just circle back to my question, me being somebody who is in a leadership position, a leadership role, always wanting to like help the team or the staff or whatever move to the next. But how does somebody like keep a little bit of that energy for themselves to figure out where they need to also grow and learn? Because I did find so much of my time was spent ensuring that other people had what they needed, that like at the end of the day, there was not, especially when I was in the leadership role. Now that I'm not in a leadership role, I feel like there's more opportunity for me to step back and reflect and think about what I want to learn in the next year. But I felt like in the leadership role, it was like, keep the boat sailing for the most part in the right direction, and make sure your people are happy. And I didn't really have any opportunity for like professional growth within myself. Does that make sense? So how do you advise leaders to, I guess, carve out time for themselves or figure out how to grow in their leadership capacity?
Sure. So I think
do I have to pay you for this? No, just kidding.
No. You can cash at me later.
Okay.
I think what the first thing I always look at is, I always say, check the patterns. But the pattern it's leading to something, right? And so the pattern is leading to where we want alignment and what we believe is good or what we think is good, and also to something that we probably don't want. So first off, notice what your patterns are. If you're finding that you are pouring out more than you are taking in, meaning you are not reading, you're not studying, you're not taking your classes, you're not taking a moment just to, to create, not taking a moment to wander, as I like to say as well, and explore, then it may be difficult for you to get people to wander, to explore, to be curious, to lead in a certain way, or to have them, encourage them to read and do all these other things. Or you are encouraging them to do that, which means they may end up supplanting you because they have moved forward. So that's the first thing. The second, but even with that, kind of knowing exploring what your trajectory you want to where you want to be. And so I always say there's like 4 major questions that people are asking themselves. Who are you right now? Who do you want to become? What do you want to do, and how do you want to do it? Those are the major questions that people are usually dealing with. My mentor gave me this, like, he hit me with that, and we talk about it all the time. That is like, who am I right now? And then that ideal person is the who do I want to become? So from there, we start to imagine, what are they reading? What's their demeanor?
Yes.
I mean, basically, what are they learning? How do they show up in leadership? And then we start to really, and this is an old cognitive behavioral therapy technique, we still use it today. Then you start to look at, what can I do today that will actually line up with who that person is? A lot of times, side note to that, a lot of times we believe that the person that we want to be, it's very far off. And really, there's a lot of the things that the person is doing from that day-to-day actions, as you imagine them, that you can really be doing today. And all of a sudden, you start to notice, if you're implementing the future selves practices and patterns in this present moment, it's happening like that. It's so quick. Because it's like pulling things together and pulling it to you instead of like running toward it, if that makes sense.
Okay. If you guys didn't just hear what he said, it's like pulling it towards you instead of running after it. I want you all to pause this podcast. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to think about that, because that is a powerful image. And one of the things that, like, yes, and yes, I read a book called by Brendan Burchard, and it was the high performing habits of a high performer or something like that. And that's what he said. He was like, so what you do is you start showing up like the person that you want to be. You dress like them, you eat like them, you create your habits like them. And the most tangible experience that I ever had in that realm, and sometimes I go there, is I wanted to run. And so not now, this was a while ago. I need to get back to this, right? But I was like, instead of saying I want to be a runner, I said I am a runner.
Yeah.
And it's that whole thing where you put your running shoes by your bed, so you don't even think about it. Like, what would a runner do? A runner would get up, they would drink a cup of water, and they would go for a run. That's what runners do. And that's so powerful. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. Instead of you're pulling it towards you instead of running after it.
Yeah.
Becoming
that person
now.
So it's in the now. And what you start to do, I mean, this is why we don't have enough time to even talk about.
We're gonna have to do a follow-up
identity, right? So like and how that forms how we think, but also like how our overall, our being, how we show up. That's where like you have to become the person that you want to be. And sometimes it's not just, it's the doing can do a couple of different things. Now, the way I also like to explain it, sometimes, like volunteerism, right? We know, here's a good practice. If you can get people, and this is something we should teach in volunteer management all the time, if we can bring people into the reason why we'd like to do, episodic events and episodic opportunities, because especially for new folks, because we know if we can get you to commit to the action, it helps to reinforce and develop the attitude. And the attitude now helps us commit to a new action that will, so it creates that loop. It's the start of the loop. And so it's like you start to move, and then you start to embody the attitude, you start to become, I'm not volunteering, I'm a volunteer.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
I'm now the thing. I
am the thing.
I'm not voting, in the space of civic engagement continuum. I'm not voting. I'm a voter.
A voter. Yes.
You start to become and identify with the thing. That is way more powerful than just doing the thing, because it's a part of who you are, not just something that you do.
And one of the things that Christy Heine, I gotta remember these podcast numbers. She was a couple of weeks ago. She was Teach for America. She does coaching as well. One of the things she said, and I think this is powerful as well, is like her like yes to being the thing and becoming the thing. And her philosophy is for now, because it might change, right? Like, for now. I think that's so powerful. Like, and the thing is, isn't that so good? It's so
good. Especially when this is also when like we try to get people to do or create a purpose statement or something like that, and understanding that can iterate over your life. Because for now is basically because it's all you really have. And if something happens, and this is why when we start to look at where you want to go, I'm mostly focused on virtues, right? More so than anything, so that your virtues, and I'm mostly focused on virtues and values in the context of growth. That's it. That's where you really want to be. You want to like identify in the space of virtue and values. Those are the places where you can grow. And don't forget that your values, I always tell people, like, your values are what's going to determine, your values and beliefs determine your behaviors, and behaviors are determining your particular results. Now, people fight me tooth and nail sometimes, and when we can't break that down in time, but you start to look at it, it's coming from somewhere. And when you feel disgruntled about something, it's a values conflict. When you're procrastinating, it's actually a values conflict right somewhere in there. It's something else that's blocking, that's subconscious, but it's something that's maybe holding you in some particular way. When you just don't want to do it, it's because the action or the task is just something that you don't value, right?
Yes.
Or some other things. But I think that is the getting us into that vein of like understanding from a growth standpoint, I try not to get people to be so identified with a vocation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
That's one of
Who
the
do
other
you want to
reasons.
be?
Yeah, it's who do you be, not what you do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so because we've seen the job market change. We know within our sector, 3 to 5 years is about what you're gonna get. So it's
Squeeze every last bit.
you're gonna squeeze it, and then you're probably gonna move on. And
Yeah.
so we know that so you can be director here, and then you end up being something else somewhere else, and something else. So that for now makes so much sense. That's why you focus on who you are as a being. So no matter where you are, your virtues and your values stay consistent, no matter what the context is.
Yeah, I think that's huge. A lot of times when people come to me and they ask me questions about like, what do you think my next steps are? I ask them, I'm like, how do you want to feel? Who do you want to be around?
Yeah.
And like when I was looking for my next best opportunity, sorry, Baltimore Core, I love that. And I'm going to use it. My next best opportunity. I have a mirror in my closet doors are mirrors. And so I use white marker all the time for like whatever. But I wrote down like, I work in a place that's stimulating with creative, exciting, happy people that come up with new ideas. It wasn't like what I was doing, it was who I was being. And I think we talked about this, that Eckhart Tolle said in English, he loves that it says that the word is human being, and it's not human doing. It's like, who are we being? And, just to loop this conversation back to AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps alumni, we find out like during our service year, we can find out that little glimpse of being, when you are engaged with a student and you see the light bulb. Or for me, it was this project that I did with the Girl Scouts and oysters, and they had to take care of these oysters throughout the entire year. I mean, they had to come out to the docks in the winter and break the ice off of these oyster things. It was serious. But in the spring, when we took that canoe ride out to the oyster sanctuary in the Spa River, they were so excited. They felt like they had accomplished something. And that was like, we were all being in the moment, and it wasn't necessarily that I was a volunteer coordinator. It didn't matter. I was just being there with these kids that were like, it's funny because they're like, we're saving the bay. I'm like, yes, you are. You're saving the bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's perfect.
Yeah. But I love that. I love the work that you're doing right now on both aspects, because national service it's a juggernaut, right? Like it's a big beast. And if we want to keep this programming going, and we got to show up in the federal government, we got to show up right and compliant and strong. And the consultants out there that are helping the commissions. I know when I was in South Carolina, I was working very closely with a compliance consultant, because you miss one little thing and it can really affect the program for years.
Immediate domino.
Yes, for years.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, your work in leadership development is so important. It's so important and so exciting. I love your approach.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we're getting to the end of the hour and I want to be respectful of your time. And so there's 1.2 million of us alumni. What do you see what could we do as a collective, as a voice? What do you think we could do coming together regionally? I don't know. What are your thoughts on what we could do as an alumni base? Should we buy a building? I don't know. Just kidding. Capital campaign.
I still like, so this is for those, that have been around for a while. I still like the idea of the public service, the National Public Service Academy. I think that's what we used to call it, where we really wanted those that wanted to go into this space, that there is a national academy just like it would be for the Air Force or the Armed Forces. I love that idea. I would love to see that where we can, and there's some pop-ups and some schools all over the place, all over the country that are doing some of this work. But I would love to like see that from a large national standpoint. But that's a good dream. We'll talk if somebody wants to talk about it. I would love to talk about it later on. The other thing is I would encourage everyone to really identify. Yeah, that's it. I would encourage everyone to identify where they are on the civic engagement continuum. Meaning, where are you in the place that you say you really want to be? So some of us really want to run for office. Now, here, can I get this in here right quick? There's so many of us that were close to the work, that created solutions, know the issue and the challenges so well that we've already become. We're usually the ones that are getting brought in as subject matter experts to help inform policy. But when we talk to folks that are in our space and we ask them, hey, have you ever considered running for office? Nah, that's not my thing. I don't know. I'm thinking I may miss being so close to, and so and I think it's a disservice to where we are, because I think that's the process. We start off with the immediate needs. Doing the work on the ground and so on. Then we move into a place where we're doing capacity building. We're creating the system so that we can do the immediate needs and conduct the immediate needs work more effectively and at a larger scale. But we also know that those problems will continue to persist until there needs probably some systems change, some policy change. Yeah. And so I would say identify where you really want to be on that continuum, and then consider if you're there. Then start to investigate how you can become that person in that role on the continuum. I had the privilege of running for office. I didn't win my first race, but I do plan on running again, because I understood that I can't. I'm working with coalitions. I'm in task force. I'm out supporting a lot of different community efforts. I've run national service programs and so on. But I realized, again, I have to put my mind where my mouth is. At some point, we got to go out there and give at least a vision of what's possible, not just the work. What's possible for us as a society, what's possible for us as a state or a city, or what have you. And I think we need way more national service members and graduates to come out of their programs and continue their work, and to be candidates locally, locally in their counties and their cities, in their states. And we need some folks in Washington.
Yeah. So. As you were talking about that, there's three things actually that popped up in my head. Number one, I saw the visual of like actually getting into the machine. So, not that we're on a conveyor belt, or the assembly line, but we're outside of the machine. We're doing the thing. We're doing the projects. We're making it happen. We're doing the transactional and transformational work. But at some point, somebody's got to get into that machine, and it needs to be retooled. Yep. And if you've been on the factory line, we'll just say you will have a better understanding of, if you raised the factory line up just a little bit, our backs won't hurt, And so getting more of us into the machine, I think is a great call to action. And I'll just point people back to the conversation that I had with Christina Flores. I think she was interview number 4 or 5 from New Politics.
Hey, Christina.
Hi, Christina. If this is something that you want to do, I'm sure Tray would be happy to talk to you, but you can enroll in the New Politics program and just see what it takes to do this. And then the last thing that I was thinking of is,
I'm a graduate, by the way.
Yay, I am too. I did the I think the very first the first program, the first part of it. But in a few weeks, I'm going to be talking to Chad Driscoll from America's Service Commissions. He's a councilman. And he also is a new politics graduate as well. And he's a National Service alumni and worked for the commission in Iowa and everything. So we're going to have a conversation. And this is actually something that we talked about. So, this is, and Robert Gottfried, who I interviewed like four weeks ago, I think is out there. I know.
You got some good names. You got some. This Nikki's name dropping. If y'all haven't seen the podcast, you got to go back and watch these episodes because she's got a lot of dope people on these podcasts.
Well, I think what's happening. So when I started this, it was like just find people, right? And I've been connecting with great, like amazing people and people who are actually meeting each other in person. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, you should get on this podcast. And they're like, I was on this podcast. And how cool is that? As that happened to Christina Flores and Dana. Dana, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name. Borelli, Dana Borelli. They're out in San Antonio. But I think that what's happening is the podcast was organically becoming what it's becoming, right? It's the law of attraction. Like it's whatever is, I'm just putting it out and things are coming back in. And I'm like, okie doke. Yes. Well, this was like so groundbreaking. And again, I'm so appreciative that I think you reached out to me on LinkedIn. I was familiar with your work. So I was like, oh, heck yes. It's part of a grander idea that I have where I really want to share AmeriCorps alumni's resources and businesses, right? Like I interviewed I forgot another person's name. That's terrible. Harrison. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I forgot her name. She's a Volunteer Maryland alumni too, but she has a terrarium business, right? Like she can teach you how to build. I think we talked about her when we were, and I want people to know that alumni have these different things that they're offering. So, I think this is an alignment. So, as we wrap up, is there any last shout outs or calls to action, or how do you want to connect with folks? What's the next step to working or interacting with Tray?
Yeah, no problem. So thanks for this. And definitely, again, the first call is to identify where you are on the civic engagement, on the CEC, as I like to call it, and then identify what you need to, if you're not in alignment, identify what you need to do to have, if that makes sense. But you can always run if you have any challenges with that. Or just want to hear my story of like what I had to go through just to run for office, even working and how I use my experience to run. You can always reach out to me at thinkforgood.org. You can also reach me at theservicenerd.com. If you're on social media, it's #ServiceNerd. I guarantee you'll find my face. Guarantee. Awesome. And then on all other social media at Tray Deadwyler. The next big thing that we're doing, if you are in the national service space and you have a national service program, the end of September 23rd through the 25th, we're doing something called Living and Leading Intentionally. It is a 3-day, 2-hour each day experience where we teach your core members and even staff. This is one of those programs that used to have people leave their jobs. They're not going to leave their jobs on this one. They're not going to leave service, but it's a way to really anchor them in their service, understanding their values and virtues. And once you understand that, it helps them understand their own motivations. So we're going to do that twice. We're going to do one in September and we're going to do one in October. I would love for folks to join. It is one of our most requested talks. We've expanded it because we just never have enough time, just like this podcast.
I know.
And so we want to make sure, basically, it's going to be, I think it's a great time. It's always impactful. Again, so feel free to reach out to us there, thinkforgood.org, or just tray@thinkforgood.org. Easy way, and we're there.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure all of that's in the show notes. And thank you so much. And it's Sade Harrison has the terrarium.
There it is.
I was like, I can't leave this podcast without giving her a shout out. This was amazing. If you like this conversation, reach out to Tray, reach out to me. I'm still recruiting podcast folks. My goal is to get a podcast out every week for a year and then see where this goes. And if this is something you're interested in, apparently if you're on YouTube, if you like and subscribe, it like boosts the algorithms, and
Definitely.
I'll figure out what that means later. But thank you again. And thanks, Trey. And for all of you, we'll be back next week with another alumni interview, or I guess alumni connection. Take care.
Thank you.
See ya.
Take care.